Welcome to the Powerlifting and Power Ballads podcast, where we bring you a weekly dose of powerlifting news, tips, and training advice with a touch of 80s rock ballads. This podcast is presented by Team Rohr Powerlifting, your source of the most comprehensive coaching and meet day preparation. Here are your hosts, Josh Rohr and Laura Sturm.
Welcome to episode 120. There's our awkward pause of the day.
Hey, I love it. Starting off strong.
We have no guests coming to see us today, so we're just going to talk about powerlifting things.
Cool. I like it. On Team Rohr's front, we had two lifters compete this past weekend, Joe House and James Vang. Joe lifted at a USPA meet in Tennessee, I believe. I don't remember the name of it. He went 9 for 9, and he was doing it just kind of for fun. He's lifting at the Masters Pro Series finals at the Arnold in March, so he just wanted to do a meet just to kind of kick a little rust off and see where he's at. We didn't really train for it or anything, but Joe, being the competitor he is, he looked at all the state records like a couple weeks ago and then looked at them again like this week, and the deadlift had changed from like 440 to 485 like in the last few weeks. And we were planning to just go somewhere around 450, but he decided to go ahead and jump from 440 on a second to 485 to break the state record, and he got it. But just kind of, Joe, 71 years old, is like, still gets a little bit carried away sometimes. But, I told him going in, like, just the goals to hit, all 9 attempts and don't do anything like maxing out or anything like that. But technically he didn't max out, but he went a little more aggressive than we had originally planned. But either way, he made it, broke the state record, so that was cool.
That's very cool.
Yeah. And then James lifted here in Georgia at a USPA meet as well, the Dirty South meet. He went 7 for 9. He had some issues with his butt coming up on his second and third bench, but squatted 551, benched 303, and pulled 600. He lifted raw with reps. So those are pretty good. And that was at 148. So those are pretty good, solid, essentially raw numbers for him. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Other powerlifting things that went on this weekend. Katey Jones, one of our lifters, ran the USA Powerlifting Kansas State Championship. It was 2 days. I think they were right around 100 lifters. I can't remember. Don't quote me on that, but that was her first real kind of big meet that she ran. So from everything I hear, it went really well. I'm sure she's at home sleeping now for the next 5 to 10 days. If she feels like me after a meet. But the Virginia Pro was also this weekend. Jazzlyn Pepper from Georgia lifted. She went 9 for 9, I believe. And did you see or hear about that meet at all? So it's the last meet prior to the Pro Series finals. It's the last pro meet that you can score points at. So a lot of the top lifters were competing there to try to get into the top 10 in the rankings to make it to the finals. Or there were a few that were already like solidified in the finals, but they were lifting just to try to win the big money. So it was pretty competitive. And one thing that I noticed, there were a few lifters that, so for whatever reason, I mean, I guess I know the reason, it makes sense, but a lot of the raw lifters like really sometimes don't push that envelope a little bit, and they just go a little more conservative, and most of the time go 9 for 9 or 8 for 9, and sometimes probably leave a little bit on the platform. And there were a few lifters this time that I felt like made more calculated risks. Most of them were still successful and still went 8 for 9, 9 for 9. But I noticed that there were a few more. For example, there were a couple lifters that missed their opening squat and went up. And that's typically not what you do. The book says don't do that. But in a meet that was this close and competitive, like it ended up in a lot of those situations meaning it actually made a difference. So I think it's pretty cool. Like to me, that's exciting. Like I think it's fun to see the sense, I guess, I don't know what you call it, sense of urgency, but living on the edge a little bit more. That was kind of fun.
Neat.
And the nerd of me, I didn't actually watch the meet live. I just looked at the score sheet. So I don't know why they missed their opening. Maybe it was depth. Maybe they flat out missed it. I'm assuming it was depth or technicality. But still, the smart play is still to repeat. But when you're in a really tight battle like that with that much money on the line, then sometimes, you got to be a little bit more calculated risk taking.
And these were raw lifters that had missed?
Yeah. Yeah. This is the Virginia Pro was all raw. The Saturday was the open lifters and Sunday was the masters.
Nice.
Yeah. So, So I enjoyed that. I enjoy the risk side of it. But speaking of the Pro Series finals, now that the Virginia Pro's over, the rankings are finalized. So we know exactly who's getting an invite to the finals. And we have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 6. We have 6 lifters that have qualified for the finals. And we have one that is on the bubble that if 2 people decline, then she'll get invited as well. So
nice.
We'll kind of let's mention them real quick. So Lee Webb, she qualified for the Masters Raw M2. Joe House qualified for the M4 Masters Raw. Katie Dodge actually qualified twice. She qualified for the Equipped Pro Series Finals and the Masters Equipped M1 Pro Series Finals. So we're still trying to decide which one she's going to do, because I doubt she's going to do both. They're Saturday, Sunday, or Friday, Saturday. So she would have to compete back-to-back days, and I doubt she's going to do that. But we'll see. Elmore, he's in the Masters 1 Pro Series Final as well. Stacie Metcalfe's in the M2 Pro Series Final, and Gretchen's in the Equipped Pro Series. So I say they're in. They've qualified. Whether or not they do it, that's still to be determined. But these are the people that actually qualified. So Gretchen qualified for the Equipped Open and Masters Pro Series Final. And then Serena Thomas, she's currently number 7 on the Pro Series leaderboard, and the top 5 qualify for the Pro Series Final for the bench only. So we're kind of waiting to see if anybody declines there, and she might get in. So pretty exciting. And so this is the first Pro Series Finals at the Arnold coming up, and the money's pretty big. For the Equipped Pro Series, the first place by dots gets $7,500. Second place gets $3,500, and third place gets $1,500. So it's a straight head-to-head dots competition. For the bench, the best dots in the open, I guess the pro bench is $2,000. Second place is $1,000. Third place is $500. And then the Masters, each of the individual individual age categories. So Masters 1, Masters 2, 3, and 4. Each of them, the best lifter by dots gets $500. And then the best overall Masters lifter dots with age coefficient gets a bonus $1,000. So it's pretty significant payout for all these categories. And that's in addition to the open raw full power, which the first place for that's $12,000. Second place is 75, and that actually pays out 5 places. So I think there's something like $109,000 up for grabs at the first Pro Series Finals this year. Or I guess
that's significant.
Extra. Yeah. So pretty exciting.
Yeah, that's cool. And I love the whole idea of the pro card.
Yeah.
In powerlifting now. That's just cool. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing, like they're not something everybody's going to get. Like there's pretty much a finite number of them, and it's very difficult to get. So if you get one, like you're pretty much a badass. We should just call it the badass card. USA Powerlifting BAC.
You should change that. Yeah. You should
badass card.
reach out to badass card. I mean, it's much cooler that way.
Yeah. That sounds better than pro anyway, right?
Yeah. Who wants to be a pro? Who wants a pro card? You want a badass card.
I'm a certified badass.
Yes. Nice. So Josh.
So Laura. Hey, are you in Christmas spirit yet?
I'm getting there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I know this is not where you were going, but I took a detour. The part for me that gets me kind of into Christmas spirit is putting up the Christmas tree, but watching National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. That's like the switch you flip.
Nice. I mean, that's valid. Do you know what does it for me? The South Park Christmas special with Mr. Hanky.
I've never seen that.
Oh my gosh. It's completely inappropriate, but amazing.
All right. Well, I might have to check it out. I'm sure Hope has seen it.
Howdy.
Okay, so I've heard that all the time. I just didn't know what it was for.
Mr. Hanky, the Christmas poo.
It might
be me,
you.
Yeah,
I was just gonna say it just might be you have always said that just randomly. Anyway, sorry, carry on.
Christmas poo. Sorry. Well, that's what gets me in the Christmas spirit. So where were you trying to go with that? Did you watch the movie?
No, I wasn't going anywhere with that.
Oh.
I was just something that crossed my mind, so I said it.
There you go.
Like normal.
Like normal. Random stuff. All right. So we'll get back to powerlifting stuff.
Okay.
So a couple of just random, I don't know. I think about powerlifting still a lot. And I don't know. Sometimes I think, I wonder what Josh Rohr thinks about this. So here you go. Here's the questions. What outside resources do you like for strength training? Like, are there any people that you follow on social media, blogs, podcasts, any of that stuff?
That is a good question. Yes. Some of them are, I mean, I follow a lot of other coaches, so I do kind of watch what they're doing. I think people that are putting out, I guess, good information. I do like a lot of the videos that the Juggernaut guys are doing. They do, I don't know how to say this without sounding, I don't know what the word is, like pompous or blah, blah, blah. But like, I feel like they do a very good job of breaking it down in simple terms. So like some of their video explanations and things like that are like, it's almost like teaching a complete beginner, even some of the more advanced concepts. It just, I don't know. I think they do a good job of like bridging that gap, because there's a difference between being book smart and being able to actually apply it and communicate it well to individuals. And I think they do a good job there. This is probably not going to be what you expect, but a book that I like is, first of all, I lent this to somebody, I don't remember who, and I don't currently own this book anymore. But it was called Power to the People by Pavel. And he's actually the co-founder of Strong First, the kettlebell thing. And that's not the reason, I guess, but a lot of and maybe I'm getting this confused with another book, but there's a lot of principles in there just about making your CNS more efficient and being able to maximize it, as well as like learning how to create full body tension for the reason of generating more nervous system activity. But I think those concepts directly apply to powerlifting, and a lot of them are underutilized, I think. So I think some of the stuff in there, I've kind of used in my own programming and coaching. Maybe even less programming is more coaching, just some of the cues and some of the ways I try to instruct people to think about things. Like, just as an example, like sometimes even squatting, like, focus on, and again, I'm generalizing, but focus on squeezing your back as tight as you can. Like try to feel your muscles just tensing up in your upper back before you squat, or just, something like that, where you're you're so hyper focused on just full body tension and contracting that it's not even the direct mover of that lift you're doing, but it plays a role. And it doesn't even just play a role in terms of bracing, it plays a role in terms of stimulating the CNS. So it actually helps you squat more because your nervous system is more hyper excited, I guess. So that's one that is a little outside the norm, I guess, that I like a lot. Try to think. I'm sure there's others, but those are the two that kind of come to mind first. And I think the reason I like that Power to the People one too is just there's a good number of, or a good amount of rhetoric or discussion about getting stronger without putting on muscle mass or gaining weight. And I think, yes, gaining muscle mass absolutely can be a factor in getting stronger. And I think that's the pretty standard method is, hypertrophy work, build muscle mass, get stronger. But, people that are in a weight class or people that are trying to go down a weight class, like you gotta still progress without gaining weight. And there's a lot of the discussion and principles are kind of around that idea. And I think that's underutilized a lot. I think it's, I think in today's, high volume, high frequency training programs, everybody's about volume, build more mass, get stronger, go up a weight class, etc. And that's not always the answer for everybody. So I don't know.
Right. I agree. And I just Googled Power to the People by Pavel. Is it Pavel? Pavel? I can never pronounce his damn name. It's Russian. And that is the correct name of the book. But actually, he's one of the first books I actually read on strength training back in the day. So I didn't know that. And I liked what he was talking about with building tension throughout the body. And I'm a big believer in kettlebell work and kind of stabilizing all of the little muscles that he talks about. So he kind of had a lot of focus on some of the simple movements, just mastering those really first before you even try to build strength on things, which I thought was amazing and great. A couple other social media things I follow pretty often is Squat University. I love Squat University because I've always liked what he said, and I think he's becoming more popular now. Just how he talks about like the power from the feet and like what happens with your feet, and a lot of like toe box shoes with toe boxes that are way too narrow are changing our feet over time, and we're getting a lot of people with problems with their feet. But he talks about ankle mobility and kind of how your knee should be traveling over your toes, and looking at a lot of little things to fix your squat, doing single leg work, doing pistol squats to your range of motion that you have. He's really good with a lot of little detail stuff that I really like, and fixing things like when powerlifters have pain doing something, or weightlifters, he works with a lot of weightlifters, pain or twisting, that something's wrong. So he works to diagnose it because he's a PT. So really good stuff there. I also like the Active Life podcasts, or at least in the day they had a really good podcast where he would talk to a lot of different people. But I really like the Active Life guys, even though they were more associated with CrossFit. I think a lot of things that they said were very valid, like their mobility screens. I feel like sometimes powerlifters have a tendency not to look at their mobility and just keep moving so that they can just, build strength on top of bad mobility, and then wonder why, their stance is super wide and then their hips hurt when they're trying to squat, or like we sometimes band-aid things instead of actually fixing them. So I like their philosophy of looking at the mobility issues, working with those, fixing those, addressing those over time, so that you can add more strength to that, and fixing those things. And I also liked Active Life because they talked about fitness professionals or coaches as actual professionals, not like there's a misnomer, I think, a little bit in the fitness industry that coaches are personal trainers and it's not really worth a professional wage.
I think there's a lot of those.
There's a lot of people that are very passionate about those sports, so they will give it away, and I think that does the whole industry a big disservice. Passion will get you really far, but if you're in the industry for 10, 15, 20 years, you're going to keep doing it on passion, or you need to pay your bills.
Yeah.
Sooner or later, you need to actually pay your bills, and you're a professional like anyone else, and you should be paid a professional wage. And they talk about that.
Yeah, well, I guess I was more alluding to the fact that there's a lot of people that actually don't know, like, their shit.
Right.
So
yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So
a lot of people.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes it a little bit tricky too. Is, for somebody that doesn't know, like, what's what, seeing somebody that's super high energy and enthusiastic, like, oh, they seem fun, I'll hire them. Well, they don't, whatever.
Right.
That's just a side rant.
Side rant. Yeah, there's a lot of coaches like that, that are great on social media, but when it comes to actual getting you stronger over time, maybe not.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
So another question for you, like, outside of just squat, bench, deadlift variations, what are some other accessories that you really like? Conventional, unconventional, whatever.
I don't think you can ever do too much back or tricep work. I think just in general, again, I'm coming at it from a powerlifting perspective. I think those are things that are going to play a role, and are probably always going to be a weak link to a degree. So usually can't overdo those. Core work, core stability stuff. I don't know. I'm actually pretty basic. So I'm not going to have a big laundry list of unconventional things. The only thing I'll say on that is there are things that come up for certain individuals. Like, we had you squatting on a balance board for a long time. I think you were like shifting to one side real bad. So I think we did some balance board squatting where you had to, you couldn't apply different pressure or the board would not stay level. So little things like that, are, again, just kind of resetting your nervous system to fire correctly and get back to squatting regular. But in general, I don't really have a bunch of bells and whistles that I use on the regular unless there's specific situations for it.
That's a good answer. But when you say the basics, is that hypertrophy work? Is that dumbbell work? Like, what's your bread and butter?
Talking in terms of like traditional linear periodization, yeah, we usually would look at like let's say we got 16 weeks to do a meet, and until a meet, we'll probably spend a good 6 to 8 weeks in a hypertrophy block or two, and then kind of ramp up into heavier stuff. But it's very very simple. So assistance work will probably be a little bit higher volume earlier in the volume block, 4, 5, 6 sets of anywhere from 8 to 15 reps, kind of also, reps coming down, intensity going up during that block. I usually try to keep the hypertrophy block pretty simple, almost boring and straightforward, nothing too crazy. And in the variations of the main lift, so like, usually in a hypertrophy block, we're not doing straight squat, bench, or deadlift, but we're doing some close variation of that is directly working the weak link of that lift. So if the bottom position of your squat is where you miss, one, is it a technique thing, or where you're just like out of position? If it's not like your first month or couple months of training, it's probably not a technique thing. It's probably just a weakness. So we, may do extended pause squats. We may do 1 1/4 squats. It may be that you're not able to use your hamstrings and glutes coming out of the bottom because you're used to bouncing. So it might be something where we have to intentionally do different motions even further away from the pause squat, where we're doing maybe barbell hip thrusts or, paused good mornings or paused RDLs to learn how to use the glutes and hamstrings in that lengthened motion, or that with the hamstrings lengthened, I guess. So, it's just things like that. I kind of forgot what the question was, to be honest.
All right, we're going to move on then, because if you don't remember, and anybody's listening has already forgotten to then.
Yeah. Well, I felt like I was going somewhere there, but then when I was like trying to circle back, I forgot where I was circling back to.
So what are your thoughts on like a minimal level of conditioning for powerlifters? Like, is there a minimum? Is there conditioning?
So there's two. Yes, there is. I like to say that, and I say this semi-seriously, but semi-jokingly too, is like, in an ideal world, you would do like go to the gym, do your powerlifting, eat and sleep, and like nothing else. So that obviously is a very low general conditioning state, right? But what people don't realize is your level of overall conditioning affects the speed at which you recover. So if you're looking at this from kind of a long-term standpoint, being in better overall physical condition allows you to train a little bit higher volume or higher intensity without it wrecking you for the next 4 or 5 days. And I think that's where a lot of people get off track is, yeah. And even me joking about it, maybe I shouldn't joke about it, but like, going for a walk after training or after you eat, like, is actually very good for powerlifting because it allows you to keep the muscles moving and things like that. It kind of keeps your metabolism going, but more importantly, it gets blood flow to those muscles that you trained. But probably even more important is the nervous system aspect of it. Like getting that, it's like, we always, and it's even becoming more mainstream now. Like when you sprain an ankle, like it used to be rest and ice, right? Now it's movement, get it moving and keep it moving. Well, it's the same thing with the body. Like, the old school traditional thought was, train, eat and sleep, right? Rest as much as you can. Well, rest and recovery kind of are not always the exact same thing. Like you have to facilitate that recovery sometime by moving. So again, I feel like I'm rambling off, and I think your question again, correct me if I'm wrong, was like certain level of conditioning or anything. And I think yes, the answer is yes. You need to be,
yes.
The traditional thought of powerlifters are fat slobs that look like shit and all they do is lift is not really the best option.
Okay. I think that's a good way to go. And I was never, ever trying to bring into that conversation, like the thought of ever getting on a treadmill or elliptical or like just running, because no, I'm not saying conditioning like that.
Well, and I think, just what you just said there, like running, even like lifting takes a toll on joints and things like that. And running also has impact. So like, if you're trying to train for like a sprinting event or even a 5K or whatever, like, okay, you obviously have to run some, but if powerlifting is your main deal, that might not be the best option, but I would say that's still better than doing nothing like outside of the powerlifting.
Interesting. Yeah, I had a weird bit of experience because I was, I owned a CrossFit gym and then was powerlifting and not really doing CrossFit. But once in a while, I would jump into a CrossFit workout because, own the gym and people like to see people, who own the gym actually do what they, preach, I guess. So once in a while I would jump in, and what was strange was my conditioning didn't way decline just from powerlifting. I still had a certain level of conditioning just from powerlifting. But I should caveat that with saying that, I wasn't just powerlifting and then sitting down. I was powerlifting and I was pretty much always on the move. And it was like training for like 12 hours a week, probably.
Well,
so
and
that's still a lot of conditioning.
And I'd say too, like you were always somewhat on a schedule. So like so put it this way, you did workouts some days in 2 hours that would have taken me 4 hours back in the day because I would rest 10, 20 minutes between sets. And I think that's where a lot of people go wrong now is like they're trying to be even if you think about a meet, you never rest 20 minutes between attempts in a meet. I mean, a flight of 14 is 14 minutes max, and that's the biggest the flight's going to be. So I think the idea that you want to be 100% fully recovered every set is not wrong. But if it takes you 20 minutes to do that, that's a problem. So, by training at a faster pace and having shorter rest periods. And when I say short rest periods, I'm talking like 3 to 5, maybe even 7, 8 minutes at the most between sets, which is still a very long time. But there's a lot of people that are still breathing heavy after 5 minutes and they're going to wait another 10 before they go. Well, your ass is out of shape. You need to get in better shape.
Right. So I think being more athletic in general helps a powerlifter, whatever that takes. And I don't preach running just because I hate running personally, but I think that there should be some things sometimes outside of powerlifting, not just, I don't know, doing exactly. I mean, of course, do what your coach says.
I mean, for different aspects. No, I don't disagree with you. I mean, for one aspect of the conditioning side of it, but for another aspect of general body control, like being able to do lateral shuffles or something like that involves a little bit of coordination and stability that you don't normally use squatting, benching, and deadlifting. And, if you get so removed from those types of things, like you are more at risk for hurting yourself when you bend over and pick up a pencil or something, you know what I mean?
Right.
And that's happened to a lot of people. They get so super strong and they're very tiny, specific movements that anything outside of that's an injury risk because it's so imbalanced.
Right.
And it sounds funny, but it's true.
Absolutely.
So a lot of our lifters do CrossFit or they're to a degree, like not like full blown go, but for the most part, I'm just like, yeah, that's fine. Go ahead and do it. And just, let me know what you do so I can kind of track overall volume and stuff like that. But like, I don't tell people not to do that unless we're getting like within, 6 to 8 weeks of a really big meet. Then I'm like, okay, let's stop doing that. But, I think there's value to it all, outside of those specific situations for the majority of people.
All right. Well, I had another question down here. It said CrossFit for powerlifters, ?
No.
No. Well, here's what I have on CrossFit for powerlifters. Like, I don't actually hate it either. Like, I think a lot of people came from the CrossFit world, and I think CrossFitters in general, from what I've seen, sometimes they don't focus enough on form and technique where powerlifters should. Some CrossFitters are more mobility focused, where maybe powerlifters should go in that way too. But I think for general conditioning, as long as you're throwing out those 2 letters RX, which is just a stupid thing for CrossFit that hopefully you don't even know what that means. Like,
It's
I think
prescription, isn't it?
Yeah, prescription. So like in CrossFit, there's a prescription, and if you do the workout as prescribed, you give yourself a bozo button. I don't even know what that means. I mean, I saw people like do things, lift too heavy, go too fast, have shitty movements just to get the letters RX next to their time or score for that day, which is just completely stupid, which is why I outlawed RX in my gym while I owned it anyway. I just took those little letters out because I'm like, that's stupid. That's stupid that your ego gets you so far into something that just to have 2 letters on, that's just dumb. So anyway, that's my rant. But if we focus on using, putting a circuit movement together, which CrossFit did well, for something to keep you moving and scale it appropriately for your movements and what you're doing and what you're focusing on, I think it's great. But people have to peel away from their ego a little bit.
So is that by definition CrossFit then, or is that just programming?
It was CrossFit back in the day. Like when CrossFit was coming up, it was all about being able to be athletic, being able to use your athleticism on sports, go rock climbing, go bowling, go,
Which makes sense.
do gymnastics,
go
learn,
bowl.
go bowling. Bowling takes athleticism. It does.
It
I mean,
does.
like,
It does. It's
there's,
just not my first thought.
but I mean, it's accuracy, it's agility. I mean, there's coordination
Yeah.
that goes on. To get good at that sport, you better be an athlete. So I think there's a lot of things that athletes do better. Can athletes do powerlifting better? Hell yeah. If you're an athlete from the beginning and then you get into powerlifting, you're going to be better. If you can keep that athleticism and increase your athleticism through whatever means, whether it's CrossFit or just, doing accessory work with short pauses, like whatever. But, it is CrossFit if it's done right. But my opinion on most CrossFit boxes, even though I came from that world, is it's usually not. It's usually, everyone going through and churning and burning.
I mean, I can say the same thing about powerlifting coaches. Like, is powerlifting safe? Yeah. Would I recommend just anybody to coach you in powerlifting? No. Would I recommend any CrossFit gym or CrossFit coach? No. And I think that's the big distinction. So when I said no to your answer or your question, like CrossFit for powerlifters, my answer would be no. But again, we got to look at, what is the reason for doing it? I guess, is that to work on some of those things, your athleticism or deficiencies you have, or is it just to go balls to the wall and try to, beat the person next to you, damn technique, damn whatever else, like, I'm just going to win. I would say no, then that's stupid. That's not going to get you to where you are ultimately trying to go. This is, I think, where people need to, I guess, prioritize too. Like, if being the absolute best power lifter you can be is number one priority, then all of these other things need to complement what your main training is and not overtake it, I guess.
Right. Drive towards that purpose instead of just confusing it.
Right. Yeah.
All right. So let's move on to the powerlifting situation. You're 8 weeks out and you're having some knee pain while squatting. You're supposed to squat today. Do you make any adjustments?
I don't know. You tell me.
Well, of course you do. If you're in pain, you shouldn't just go through pain. Should you even squat? Period. I guess it depends on how much pain. If it's just super minor, should you do exactly what was programmed? No. That would be my blanket answer. How you adjust that is kind of up to what's going on with you. And do you do unloaded squats? Do you just do lighter squats, less volume, wear wraps?
Yeah, I think, it depends. And I think, the degree to how much pain you have, like, if your pain is a 3 out of 10, okay, that's probably not real bad. If it's a 7 or an 8 out of 10, okay, that's pretty significant. Then we also got to look at, what's causing the pain. Is squatting what's causing the pain, or is the pain all the time, or is it showing up when you're doing other things and you just feel it during squat because of that? So, I mean, there's all those factors, but yeah, the short answer is absolutely you modify what you're doing that day. And like you said earlier, it very well mean you don't squat today. It doesn't mean if you miss today's squat workout that your squat's going to tank and you're never going to be a good squatter again. I think that's the mentality of everybody. Like, if one workout isn't done exactly the way it's written, it's all for naught. And that's, it's all for naught when you push through and actually injure something that was just something that was hurt.
Absolutely. All right. So, a new lifter tip for today: pick attempts that you can make, even if that means attempting less than the plan said.
Yep.
You mean in a meet?
In a meet. Yeah. I think
pick attempts.
Yeah. So many lifters, especially, training in a gym, you got all your buddies, you got your music playing what you want. If you hit a PR or whatever, you can normally hit this weight in the gym pretty consistently. You get to a meet, nerves kick in, the pace of the meet. Sometimes it's hot because there's a lot of people, sometimes whatever, you miss a couple warm-ups because you get rushed at the end. And I think so many people just get locked in with what they know they can do and what they have done in the gym or previously, that, okay, well, I'm putting this weight on the bar. Like, there's no reason I shouldn't get it. And I think that's kind of stupid, because all of those factors need to be accounted for. So even though, we might write out, our game plan, we have our attempts and warm-ups written up, we have to be smart enough to be able to deviate from that based on the situation. And a lot of people, I guess, aren't, I don't know if smart's the right word, but they're not smart
Flexible.
enough. No, we'll say smart.
Well, I mean, I think you have to be flexible enough to know that, like, sometimes things don't go as planned, and it's a day, it's a sliver of time, doesn't mean it's going to go as planned.
Yeah.
It's like a wedding, or
Like a wedding.
any mother that's given birth. It's like a birth plan. But then you get to the day and you're like, oh, well, that's nice. That didn't quite work out that way, but the baby still gets.
So my thought, so when you said that it's like a wedding, my first thought was a Seinfeld episode. Big surprise. It's one of Jerry's stand-up things, but he's like, you ever notice, like, at weddings, they don't call the groom by their first name just in case something happens. They can just have somebody else step in and take their place. Because they always say, do you take this man to be your wealthily wedded husband? They don't say, do you take Dave? So that way anybody can just fill in. That's where I
never noticed that. I guess you're right, but yeah. I mean,
because they're basically all they're all interchangeable apparently. Just next guy up.
All right, let's wrap this up today, Josh.
Sounds good. So, don't forget to follow us on Instagram at PL Ballads Podcast. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or anywhere else that you listen to podcasts, do please leave us a 5-star review and subscribe. That would help us out a lot. Apparently, I don't really know how it all works, but I hear other people say that, so I'm assuming it means something. But on that note, we'll catch you guys next week. Later.
Bye now.
Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode of the Powerlifting and Power Ballads podcast, please remember to subscribe and share it with your friends.